Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Serge. I hope you all had a great weekend. So listen, I came across this article that just got published a few weeks ago on IBS. It's a big thing on there. So I wanted to share a little bit about this study and what they found and what it means for us or people who deal with IBS. It could be colitis, inflammation, Crohn's disease, all those gut issues have one factor in common is inflammation and gut microbiome disruption or imbalances. So this article is diet and gut microbiome interactions of relevance for symptoms in IBS. So what they did is they look at different factors, different markers, different food, different quality of food. They look at meat, fat, carbs, protein, different things. And they found a few really interesting points. One is they look at the strongest factors that are correlating to IBS, which may actually mean that they cause or is part of this IBS situation. So they found three things. One is they found a high BMI. So people who are overweight tend to have more inflammation in the body, and they are more at risk of IBS. That was one of the strongest factors, actually. And then they saw the strongest factor was insulin, high insulin or insulin resistance. So insulin is connected to carbs, to sugar, which we're going to get back to that. And the last point is they found that food that contain the highest glycans are the one causing most trouble to people. So glycans are types of sugars. We have simple sugars like fructose, galactose, glucose. When you put these monosaccharides together, you have a chain, a polymer. So glycans are different types of polymers that contain glucose, that contain galactose, that contain fructose. So these are fibers at the end of the day. So they found that the foods, fruits, vegetables, that contain the highest glycans, fibers, those fibers, cause the most trouble to people. That's maybe why the FODMAP diet is really beneficial with people with IBS, is that diet is really low fiber. So at the end of the day, the goal, based on this paper, is to figure out the fibers, the vegetables, or the fruits, or the nuts that cause the most trouble to the patient. And it can be anything. I mean, I've had people who were nightshades, for example, tomatoes, bell peppers, potatoes. I've seen people who nuts were a problem. They were gassy and irritable, inflamed with nuts. Sometimes it's spinach, sometimes it's kale. It can be broccoli, cruciferous. So it can be anything at the end of the day. And one of the things we need to do is to figure out what are the food sensitivities that trigger these flare-up. So they found that those glycans trigger what we call an IgE-mediated response. So IgE is antibodies that are triggering histamine problems in the body. So they found that glycans trigger this IgG, which leads to histamine, that leads to food sensitivity. So people feel gassy, they have bloated or inflammation from foods. So glycans were the worst. A glycan, like I said, is a type of sugar, a type of fiber, which connect to the other finding, which insulin. So they found that people eating the most processed food, the most sugar, the most carbs, have the worst difficult time with the IBS symptoms, really hard to normalize and regulate IBS problems. So based on these findings, the goal is to lower the fiber that triggers those problems. Like I said, it can be anything, and sometimes you have to do some type of detective work. We really have to do a lot of work to figure out what is are the triggers. And of course, all the starches, the carbs, that's something too we need to look at. A lot of people consume too much carbs, starches. When you have IBS, typically there's a gut microbiome issue. There may be an overgrowth of that bacteria. And this is what exactly they saw is when you eat those foods, you actually promote, you help those those bad bacteria in your gut, leading to the formation of gas and inflammation and so on. So we need two things: look at the diet and rebalance the gut flora, get rid of the bad bacteria. And one of the missing component in IBS that I see 100% of the time is parasites. I see parasites in IBS, in colitis, in Crohn's disease, in gut issues all the time. And this is something they didn't look at it. They just look at bacteria, the bacterial component of the gut. But when you start looking at parasites, it's even more interesting because these parasites are known actually to disrupt the bacterial component, the yeast component, and the virome, which is the virus component of the gut. So 100% of the time when we start detoxing the gut from parasites using some herbs, the inflammation, the IBS goes away every single time. Of course, we need to address the diet in the meantime. And those triggers, when the gut is back to normal, those triggers don't trigger the IBS anymore. They just don't do that. So when the body starts to respond to food that you know you shouldn't, it just means something is off. Something is not right in your gut. So look at eliminating as much strong, like hard fiber to process. Some people will go all the way to a low carb or carnivore type of diet to eliminate all those starchy and do an elimination diet and add the food one at a time to see what triggers the IBS. That's one way to do it. There's other ways to do that, but the goal is to not to feed the bad bacteria. And this is what they found in this article is glycans. Those glycans will actually feed the bad bacteria, making the symptoms even worse and causing a histamine response on top of that. I would really be intrigued if they will look at the parasite component along with the IBS. I can guarantee you they will see something. So I hope this makes sense. If you have any IBS questions or gut question, please let me know. You can write a comment. This is one of the things we do every day. We can help the body to get back to a normal gut function. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.